What's poppin', everybody? Episode 54 of the Slip and Weave podcast coming at you right now. I got some pretty big announcements to make today, and obviously we're gonna get to do a little breakdown of this Saturday's performance between John Ryder and Danny Jacobs. And my guest this week is going to be Mike Reyes of Reyes Boxing, but this all kind of ties together. So I'm going to be doing my very first commentary gig at the Down and Dirty series in Melrose, just outside of Boston. I got to give a big shout out to my man Otis Griffin. He's a friend of the show, friend of mine, and he's been a big support in introducing me to people, and so I appreciate him and MG Ring. It's been great talking to some of your fighters and whatever. So Otis put me on to my guest this week, who's going to be Michael Reyes, who is the head of Reyes Boxing, who's going to be the promoter of the card this weekend. So it's going to be the Down and Dirty Boxing series. Obviously, Mike and I will let you know all about the card on this week's episode. And I'm just really fucking excited, man. And I know I don't have like the biggest audience, but to anybody that watches, your support is really appreciated, and it's doing something because I'm doing my first commentary gig. So, yeah. So thanks. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited. I'll make sure I leave a link below so you guys can watch the fight, and support club boxing, man. You know what I'm saying? It's really important. It's important that fighters have good club shows to develop, and so that it's they're not deer in the headlights when they get to TV. You know what I'm saying? So as far as I wanted to just briefly touch on this Danny Jacobs John Ryder fight. I'm a New York kid, man. So there was a time where if you would ask me who my favorite fighter was, there was a couple years where I might have said Daniel Jacobs was my favorite active fighter. I've been to multiples of his fights. I was at some of his early comeback fights after he had cancer and surgery and all that. And he was fighting on undercards. I was at some of those fights. You know what I'm saying? So I've been following the Danny Jacobs story, real close. I'm a huge fan, man. I was at the fight with Triple G. It was and it was a special night. It was a special night of boxing in Madison Square Garden that night. So it's been weird to watch him in his last two performances kind of become something else. I'm not really sure where he's at, because again, this was another performance like the Rosado performance, which I've been critical of multiple times on that show. There's no way he won that fight. There's no way. And it was because he really just wouldn't let his hands go. He controlled the first 6 rounds, I think, pretty much, not easily, but handily. You know what I'm saying? He did what he had to do, and he was winning all the rounds. Then there was a lull, 7, 8, and 9, where Ryder came on really strong. And then the last 3 rounds of the fight, I would say, was kind of tit for tat, inside fighting. So for one, I don't think Ryder won this fight. I didn't see him winning more than 4 or 5 rounds of this fight. But the rounds that he did win were a lot clearer, and that he did more physical damage in the rounds that he won, and probably cumulatively did more physical damage to Danny than Danny did to him. But you got to score the fight on a round by round basis. You know what I mean? That's not how you're scoring it. So I thought Danny won the decision. I thought Danny won the boxing match. You know what I'm saying? But the Danny Jacobs that I've watched, basically since he turned pro, I really would have smoked this guy his whole career, and I can't figure out what his why in his last 2 fights it's been so hard for him to pull the trigger. I can't tell if he just doesn't have the heart for it anymore, which is understandable after a long career. I can't, You know, it looks like his hands are still, again, it looks like his hands are still fast. It looks like his feet are still good. It looks like he has the physical tools. You know, he hasn't been beat up that, he hasn't been had, an extremely above average physical career. But I was bummed out, man. I'm a big Danny Jacobs fan, bro. I wanted him to shine. I wanted this to be the comeback, and then he gets another big fight, and then, he can maybe ride off into the sunset or keep going, whatever, But regardless of whether or not I think he won the fight, I just think the performance kind of showed. It gave a real honest look at where he's at, and if you compare that to the guy who fought Triple G and Derevyanchenko, and Peter Quillen, I just don't think he's that guy anymore, and I'm not sure why. I think it is more mental than physical. There could be, a part of it where it's like you can only cut weight for so long before your body's like, I can't do it anymore. I don't know, but I think you never want to determine somebody's future for them, but in my opinion, it looks like it's coming toward the end, unless he's got a real fire inside, still, and he feels like he can learn from this and keep it moving. I wouldn't put it past him. The guy came back from cancer when they said he wouldn't walk again. So do I think he could win another fight? Hell yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what to think. So with that, my guest this week, like I said, is Mike Reyes, head of Reyes Boxing, and we talk about the card that I'm going to be doing commentary on and the card that he's promoting, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Mike Reyes. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking some time to chop it up with me this morning, bro.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. So I guess anybody can introduce themselves to somebody else, right? So go ahead, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Reyes Boxing and how you got started.
All right, phenomenal. My name is Michael Reyes. I'm the president of Reyes Boxing, Inc. We started roughly around 2 years ago, bringing on some professional fighters, getting some stuff situated. And now we are presenting a series of boxing. We are on our number 3 called Down and Dirty. It's out here in the New England area. We've been to Maine. We've been to Mass. This year we have plans to be in Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So we're hitting all of the states in New England. Basically, the whole idea, the brainchild of this was bringing solid fights to the boxing community that also allowed world-class level fighters to go on a club scale. So we're excited about it. About myself, I grew up boxing. Started when I was 9 out of necessity. My mother found me in a lot of trouble at 9. She walked in. I had a little .22 pistol, taught it to be in gangs, and she called my uncle. My uncle's like, "Come on, let's go. We're gonna go to a boxing gym." Brought me out to a boxing gym and threw me in there the very first day with some 11, 12-year-old kids, and I had never boxed before. And of course, I, like everybody, got myself beat, and it was okay because I was like, I gotta go back tomorrow. And then tomorrow turned into the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and that kept me in the gym. I had a pretty good amateur career as far as goes. I had 64 fights. I only lost 4. Won nationals a couple times. I was in a weird age bracket. I had dreams of the Olympics, but in 96, I was only 16 years old. And 2000, I would have to wait till I was 20. Knowing myself, I was like, I'm not going to stay that same level of focus, right? Because I would have to stay home, get a job, do the whole thing. So instead, I decided to wrestle in college. So that kind of left my boxing career alone. Went and wrestled at Norwich University, military school up in Vermont. Took a commission in the Marine Corps in 2001, in June of 2001, and spent 6 years in the military between 9/11 and some other stuff. And came home, thought my career, my life was mapped out for me. I'm going to come home. I'm going to get a job in finance. Everything's going to be right. Hated it. And from there, I decided, all right, well, I'll work in the gyms. I knew that setting, so I started working as a personal trainer. Expanded that business. Worked at Equinox for a long time. Won a few awards with them, and then I stepped out, started my own gym, which is up here in Salem, Mass. That's where Reyes Boxing came from.
Wow! So all of the fighters from your management or your promotion are in-house essentially.
So
like from the gym?
we have a camp. Yeah, we have a camp. We house about 5 at any given time. So
That's
we
awesome.
rotate the guys in and out. Right now, I have Jason Minda from Ecuador here. I've got Alex Turan and Giovannis Barraza from Colombia, and I have Gonzalo Delario and Marcelo Bazowski here from Argentina. So I bring my guys in. We do a camp. We train hard. They all fight. They rotate out. I bring some other guys in.
That's a great system, bro. I don't know if I've ever heard it done exactly like that, to be honest.
There's some great guys out there that do have camps that run very similar. Hector Bermudez out in Springfield. He has a bunch of guys out there that he brings out to camp. So I'd love to say that I was the only one, but everybody's camp's a little different.
Who were some of the first fighters that you started training or had in the gym, or you know what I mean? Who were some of the first fighters you were affiliated with?
Yeah, so my very first professional fighter that I picked up was Juan Carlos Abreu, who is the WBC International 154 champ right now. So I manage him and I trained him for a while. For when he won the WBC FECA title, I was training him. And then from there, it just expanded out.
Were you training him for the fight with Soto Caras?
So I wasn't. I had him just after the Disputin fight.
Okay. I remember his fight with Soto Caras. That was like a classic, man.
Well, he just turned around the other day and had a very similar fight with that Russian kid, right? He was down on the cards, losing, and knocks the kid out in the 8th round. So that Soto Caras fight was very similar.
Oh yeah, that was a classic, and obviously Soto Caras is always exciting. But when he's got the right dance partner, and Abreu was that guy that night.
Definitely. Yeah, it was definitely was. We'll see. He's got a fight coming up in March, defending his title out in England. So we'll see how we do there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Down and Dirty 3 for a second. Tell me a little bit about the lineup and some of the guys you're excited about. I understand. Isn't there a heavyweight on your card that's like almost 7 feet tall?
Yeah, it's awesome. You did your research. I love it. So Down and Dirty 3 is definitely the biggest of all of them. We've had, on the first one, we had Charles Foster fighting. On the second one, we had Barraza fighting for a title. It's my son. So it was great, but this third installation, we really took it to the next level. We've got Yamaguchi Falcao fighting against the 10-1 Faris. And Faris, the best part about this whole thing is that Faris is taking this fight extremely serious because it's for the WBC Latino title. He wants to bring that home to Argentina. And Falcao, I mean, we all know Falcao, right? So Falcao is the 2012 bronze medalist, questionable, probably should have actually won the gold. You know, he had an amazing fight against Ballard, extremely close. And some of the questions that were asked is he explosive enough? Is he controlling enough to be a world titleist? We know he's good enough, but is he exciting enough to bring people to want to watch him fight? And, you know, in camp, we've talked about that. He understands that this is his chance to shine. He needs to come in. He needs to get a big stoppage. He needs to prove to the world that he is dominant. Right behind him, we've got Conor Coyle, a charismatic, exciting young fighter from Ireland who at 160 is enormous.
He's a big head.
And, you know, he's huge. And we 100%, you know, believe that he has all of the qualities to be a world champion. And right now that 160 division is being all changed up, right? You've got Demetrius Andrade moving up to 168. You know, we all know what happened the other day with Charlo, so we'll see what occurs there. But you know, like a lot of movement around in that 160 division.
Yeah.
And because of that, we feel that, you know, within 5 to 6 fights, Conor can be that guy. He can be the guy who steps up and takes out, you know, what you would call the champion at that time. You know, Golovkin, we already know, is potentially moving up to 168. So everyone's chasing the big Canelo fight, and it leaves 168 wide open with a few really great fighters.
Yeah, if it's a great time to be a really talented middleweight, because it's a division that's kind of up for grabs, and it's like a legacy division. You know what I mean? It's got a great history, even recent history, but for the most part, all of the best fighters, be it Danny Jacobs, Canelo, I think Charlo's probably going to move up. A lot of the top guys there are in flux as far as what weight they're going to fight at. So if you're a beast at middleweight, it's a good time to be that guy.
I agree with you. You know, in middleweight division, right? It is like I love the word. I love what you just said, a legacy. It is a commanding, controlling division that has always been there and always stood true and strong, right? From Marvin Hagler to Sugar Ray Leonard to Roberto Duran, everyone's passed through there and they've owned their level. Hopkins. You know, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr., James Toney. The list goes on and on and on and on. And truly, it really is the controlling. Right now, everyone's excited about this 168, 175, but they're all chasing the one big guy. That's the end of it. Everyone's chasing the one big guy. And I'm excited because those 3 weight classes mesh so well. Like anybody, Coyle could fight at 168 if we wanted to. He's that big, you know. Probably step up at 175 if the fight and the money was right. So it's such a great area to be in, but that middleweight division itself it's now it's like, who's going to be the standout? Who's going to be the guy who's going to take over that division?
Yeah,
and we believe
if you take over the middleweight division too, and you get some belts and whatever, it gives you a certain amount of leverage in bigger fights to say like, yo, I clean this weight class out. This is my weight class. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's true. And we saw it. I mean, look, it just most recently, Canelo has been he's shown everybody. He's stepped into the weight class. He's cleaned the whole thing out. He's unified it. He's moved up. And he's right now the highest paid fighter there is. So the blueprint's there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just follow it, you know, and you go with it. And so love Conor Coyle in this fight. You know, it's not for anything big, it's for ABF title. But he is fighting a guy who's 8-1, and the guy was emaciated in all of his previous fights. He fought at 147, but now we've gotten videotape from his training camp, and the guy is jacked, and he is in there down in Brazil knocking dudes out. So we're excited about that fight and that test for Conor. Locally, I've got some really amazing guys I'm excited to watch fight. We've got Marcus Bates, who phenomenal fighter, great story. I want to tell this story because I'm hoping that you'll get him on here one of these days. But just an amazing story. 8-3, New Hampshire champion, coming in, changed his promotion team. Now he's excited, he's revigorated, and he's really making his push to get up in the upper echelon. So that's exciting. And then, of course, the man that you were talking about, Big Donnie Palmer. Donnie Palmer is enormous. He is,
Crazy.
6'10", 6'11". He's been over here sparring with all my guys. Been part of our camp. It's really a return for Donnie. He's running for Congress.
Wow.
He's like a Klitschko,
right.
So he's running for Congress. He's excited to return back to boxing. He's not fighting the funny thing is he's not fighting anybody that in theory or on paper we should be worried about, but Jarrell is taking this fight to heart. He's like, I'm coming to win. I've got to win this fight. And so, with that being said, I think the fun thing about fights like that, on our last card, we had a fight like that. We had a 2-4 guy fighting a 4-0 guy. And he turned around, came out and stopped the 4-0 guy.
Right.
And this is one of those fights that very well could happen if Donnie's not on his horse and on his A game. So we're excited to see that. Donnie is a principal part of what we want to move forward. But hey, this is boxing, and if you don't step up, then you step down. So.
And people very often undervalue like the I hate to use this term, but the B side. They undervalue those guys because a lot of those guys have to come in not the best circumstances, and so they're able to gain different kinds of experiences, and they score upsets and win fights at different times when maybe a guy hasn't had a certain kind of experience or had to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I do. You're 100% right. Is this whole A side, B side thing that's come out and turned into the world, and like, it's interesting to me because in the end of the day, it all depends on who steps on that blue corner or that red corner. They step in that ring. It's those two guys. Yep. So yes, while maybe 90% of the matchmaking is done, that we know who's going to win that fight in all of boxing, there is that 10% of excitement. And the key thing is that if guys realized, if the B-side guys really realized, hey, look, like all I have to do is, this is my chance to step up, then I feel like we have that type of style where you're like, all right, well, it's on. And that's what Down and Dirty is about. That's that breakdown. It's,
right.
Like, we're moving kids. I'm not, we're club level. We're moving kids. We're trying to build them up so they can get to the big dance floor. We're not the big dance floor, right? The big dance floor is Top Rank, PBC, Matchroom, Golden Boy. We know our role. I'm not so, if people ask me, well, how come these guys win? Because those guys are building and they're learning, and that's what they're meant to do. They come out and give you a good show. Now, like you said, you never know who steps in that ring. I've got Jason Minda here, who is a phenomenal opponent, stepped in with Kana Islam and going into the 7th round before he got stopped was winning the fight. He was in with Junior Union in an extremely competitive fight. There are those guys, they bring it. That's what it is. And that's what we love. And that's what we try to bring.
Yeah. Going back for a second to Yamaguchi, is he fighting at middleweight?
No, so he's at 168. His brother's at middleweight. Gotcha. So oddly enough, his brother is somebody that we've touted or looked at for Connor in that move, because we believe that Yamaguchi's brother, the Top Rank, is 100% going to push him to be that next middleweight champ. They've poised him in the right position. He has the right pedigree. So we know that that's where it's going, and that's what we're going to chase. So
that's going to be a hell of a matchup.
It is. Two really great fighters.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think when I've seen Yamaguchi fight, I think I've seen him fight either at middleweight or at junior middleweight. So it's going to be interesting to see how moving up the 8 pounds. You know, you were talking before about how people asking, you know, is he explosive enough or exciting enough? You know, maybe not having to cut as much weight winds up helping.
Right.
You know, a lot of times you see that because he's so technically solid that maybe with a little less weight cut, there's like just that little bit more juice, you know?
And that's Dakota, you're 100% right. That's what, you know, is in camp. We've got him on a strength conditioning program now. You know, it's allowed him to be able to not only focus on coming down. That Ballard fight was at 160. And I think that was that showpiece, right? Of, hey, look, like, where's that extra turn up notch? That maybe wasn't just there because he was emaciated, you know, tired and beat down. So,
and now, of course, Ballard is going to be fighting Jaime Munguia. You know what I mean?
Which is crazy. You know, we were just on that card. Barraza fought Alexis Rocha on that card. So we were just out there to watch. Ballard fought just for us. We were the co-main event. And then Munguia versus Rosado. So we were there. And it's funny, Ballard didn't look his best in that fight, but you could see how good he really is. So it will be interesting to see this fight between Munguia and Ballard. I think everyone's counted Ballard completely out, but I don't know if I would. You know, the kid's talented.
Anyone I know that I've talked to that's familiar with Ballard is like, this is a better fight than you'd think.
It is. It's a lot better fight. You know, I think they put so much hype behind the Rosado fight that they thought that they might be struggling with how they can explain that Ballard is that good, but he really is. The kid can fight. And you know, when you step up to this type of like, hey, look, I'm here and I'm getting this chance to fight, I like his chances.
Yeah, it's a great matchup. So in the larger world of boxing, I read the other day that they finally made Spence versus Ugas. I couldn't.
Amazing.
I'm so excited about this. I know everyone wants Spence Crawford. I want Spence Crawford as much as the next guy, but if I'm not gonna get it, this is a hell of a fight.
I love it. I love the fight. You know, I think the fight itself is going to be amazing. You know, Ugas is a top level fighter. It deserves to be there. You know, everyone's giving him some crap. Well, he beat Manny Pacquiao, who was on his way out. He beat everybody that he had to beat to be there. Yeah. And you know, and so he stepped in that last minute and was like, okay, cool, I'll do this still. And you know, you look at the fight that he had with Sean Porter. You look at all these fights, and they were good fights. You know, they were good fights. And the kid is an Olympian. Honestly, this is definitely Spence's biggest test. Because usually Spence is the bigger guy. And here he's not, right? Here he's equal or a little bit smaller. You know, that 147 division is just so amazing. I do love the thought of Spence Crawford. But I also think that I personally, and only because I sat on the other side of Jaron Ennis with Juan Carlos Abreu and watched Ennis demolish my fighter. I personally believe that Ennis is the best in that division, hands down. I think he's too big and too fast and too strong for everybody else. He just dominates. He's a 154 or 160 who fights at 147. Crawford is a 140 who fights at 147. You know, so like I think that to me, I'd rather watch him clean up that division. I don't think those guys will give him a chance. So I love this Ugas fight. I think I commend PBC for taking their two guys and putting them together when they don't necessarily have to do that. You know what I mean? And making that match to get one step closer to a unified 147, which is awesome.
And even then, you know, they have the ability now to have like the number one PBC welterweight, at least, you know what I mean? So that situation's not as muddied. And, you know, as for Ugas, like you said, he beat who he had to beat. And I didn't think that Manny looked bad. I thought Manny looked pretty good. And Ugas was just hitting him with that jab over and over again and just had the right style to get to him. I think potentially he would have always given Manny problems just on his style.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with you. You know, it's argument about Manny's skill set. He's a top talented fighter who is amazing, right? So like, but if you look at guys that he did have trouble with, it was guys who extended out that jab, all the way from back with Marco Antonio Barrera, right? Like who used the jab and controlled the ring and then added power, not just trying to light somebody up. So yeah, I mean, you're right. He probably would have, at any given time, given him hell.
And
And I agree. And now, you look at Ugas, and this is the exact same thing, right? Spence did good against Danny Garcia, but like, I mean, this guy's big and he's strong, and he can really control that jab. So, I feel like this is definitely one of those things where Spence has to be like, how am I going to change my style to go after this guy, not the other way around? Because we know that Ugas is going to come out and bring that jab, and he's going to do this, and he's not going to try to change. He's not going to do this chase or any of that stuff. He's going to fight how his best chances to win. So.
And he's got that great defensive shell. He keeps that high guard. He's moving his head. He's got that Cuban style. I've thought since the Pacquiao fight, I'm like, this is the best win that any of these guys have right now. And if he doesn't get a big fight out of this, I think that's really not, you know what I mean? That wouldn't be justice if Ugas didn't get this fight, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's interesting, right? Because you hit it on the nose, right? He's got the high guard, but the one thing about his high guard, and it's so well respected. As a trainer, I see these guys come in, they want Philly shell style or high guard earmuffs. And I'm like, but every time you bring that high guard up, you leave that body open.
Yep.
Ugas doesn't have that issue. If you watch his fight, he doesn't bring the earmuffs up and leave this body open. He's Never. Down, he's tucked. He's in that full shell. He's got full defense. So he doesn't take huge punches versus guys fighting in that Philly shell and still being clipped off the top of their head. So I love, I'm a big fan of the basics, and he does the basics well.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think that since the Tony Mayweather era, do you think that the Philly shell is more of a style that guys default to?
That is an awesome question. I think that this era of boxing, James Toney was a little bit different for me in reference to kind of his style and where it progressed from. Because if you look at James Toney as a middleweight versus the James Toney who was at cruiser and heavyweight, total different fight styles. Yep. I think that this era tries to, run before they crawl. And what that means is that I appreciate the skill set of the Philly shell style. But the thing is that all of those guys who we link to it, Mayweather, Tony, even as far as
again
Bernard, he's amazing. Or even go further back, Joe Frazier. They fought with that style when they were controlling and demanding, and they could do it. They were already dominant fighters. Right. They didn't come out. We look at that Diego Corrales fight with Floyd Mayweather. He wasn't sitting in the Philly shell style. That wasn't the same Mayweather who fought against, Canelo Alvarez going like this. He had his hands up. He was moving. When you demand, when people demand that respect, and I reach back all the time to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson controlled that division. People were already beat before they walked in that weight until they weren't.
Right.
And that's what that Philly shell style is to me, right? Like these guys have already mentally beat half these opponents before they even get in the ring. And then they use this style to roll out, and I personally just don't think I don't think it's made for everybody. And I think it takes a very talented fighter to cover it. And I wish that people would go back to the traditional, let's keep your hands up, keep your elbows in, stay on your side, use your full turn and punches. Show me a skill set that's there, not something that looks all that great, but something that like can take to anywhere. That can be taken anywhere. So.
Well, because it's like it's a part of the skill of a skill set. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's very rare that you would see Mayweather just walk out into the middle of the ring tucked, like just walking around the ring like this. It's like if he's on the inside, he flashes something. It's a piece of the skill set, and it's also something, because I train people too, and I would see guys trying to do it that have no place doing it, or not the experience or the reflexes. And I think you're right. I think it's like the thing of, in nowadays, there's kids that walk on a basketball court for the first time and they want to shoot threes because of Steph Curry. You know what I mean?
100%. Right.
And so I think a lot of times that happens with the shoulder roll, because it is a great tool, but if you don't know how to use it and you use it the wrong way, it can also get you knocked the fuck out,
Yeah. It's a great, the Curry analogy is awesome. I love that because, when I was growing up, it was Michael Jordan. Everybody wanted to slam the ball, right? Like everyone was ducking the ball. And so it's the same premise,
it's running before you can crawl.
100%. And that's what I tell my guys. And we have this, the constant argument. And right now we're seeing it in a second coming with Canelo, and people trying to do this bob head movement thing that he does. And it's like, guys, look, watch the growth of this kid from fight 19, where we saw him, in the US market, up through to now fight 54. And like, watch that growth. Let's see that growth, like it put it all together. And that's what I'm excited to see. And that's what, I guess that goes back to my point. That's what I look at a kid like Jaron Ennis, and I'm like, this kid has so many tools in his toolbox. His defense is impeccable. He does it with his hands up. He does it with his hands down. He can hit you with the left or right and hurt you.
Yep.
So, it's where we're at. Those guys, I want to see more of that,
And it's important to learn all that stuff. You know what I mean? Because what makes somebody like Mayweather or Canelo or any of these top level guys special is that they make difficult shit look easy. Right. And that's what, young fighters have to understand. It's like, that looks easy because that dude's amazing.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I want people to really understand that's right on. Like, just because a extremely talented, extremely gifted fighter makes it seem easy, it is not. And when you're sitting in the gym and you're boxing against somebody who isn't at your same level, and you're like, oh, look at me do this. It's not how it works. Like, it's no different than you stepping in with somebody else. So.
And you have to be pressed in the gym in order to know that for real. I mean, segueing right into Canelo, I saw that he's about to sign the deal where he's going to fight Dimitri Bivol on May 7th, and then a third Golovkin fight, I think September 17th. I mean, that's crazy.
It is crazy. It definitely seems that Eddie Hearn has the leg up on that fight. Yeah. And but there have been so many presentations. Like, that guy has worked his butt off to be the guy who makes the decision on what he does. Right now, it's the Canelo show. He's telling promoters, I'm getting 40 or 50% of takes, and they're like, okay, well, I want to, because I'm still bringing 25 million off of him one fight. So I love the Hearn push. Were there better fights out there that for the public, or better for us to watch? Yeah, I mean, definitely. Who knows what Bivol brings to the table against Canelo? But were there guys who I think deserved the fight first at 168? Yeah, Benavidez. Charlo, Andrade. All these guys deserve the fight. They've been chasing you. They've been trying to get there. They're the fighters. But in the end of the day, it is a sport that is a business, and the man decides what he wants. And I don't think that he ducks anybody. I think he thinks about his legacy.
Yeah.
What's going to make me cement myself as an all-time,
Yeah.
and he takes the fights that are going to adjust that. I think we see that. I think the only reason he's thinking about going back to 175 against Bivol is because everyone gave him such a hard time against the win over the other 175, which I names it. Kovalev, yeah. Over Kovalev, right? Well, Kovalev was washed up. And he was like, no, like I'm good enough to beat those guys. I mean, he didn't certainly go after the big 175s. You know what I mean? He's not chasing the monster guys. He's like, Bivol's a little bit smaller. He's a little bit but he's gonna go and he's gonna, do his thing.
And
win.
honestly, it's very rare you see Bivol even lose a round. So I think
Right.
As far as like the most damage he could take in a fight, I don't think it's the worst fight. But I do think that on a technical level, Bivol stays on the end of that jab. He's real smart. He doesn't get hit a lot. I think stylistically, it's actually kind of tough. And he's not the biggest name. So I saw that and I was like, I love the fight. It's not the big fight, but I love the fight.
Right. Yeah, people. It's definitely. I mean, look, a guy won the title at what, 10 fights or 11 fights. Like, I mean, he is stylistically probably the most challenging. That I think it really, Canelo just looks at like how big. Like, I don't think he's concerned about some of these technical stuff. I think he feels like if they're technical, I'm still going to be ahead of them because he's that much more technical. Yeah. We just saw that in the last fight against a fast. I mean, it's almost mirror image, right? Bivol and Caleb Flint, almost exact same fighter, in that sense where height-wise, size-wise, technical skill, but not a monster puncher, right? Versus, some of the other guys at 175 who were just dogs, monster punchers who will just fight across no matter what. So again, like I said, the guy's smart. Business is smart, and could he lose? Yeah, 100%. Any point at any time, anybody can walk in that ring and lose. But I think he made the right play, and I think the Triple G fight is probably the biggest fight because there is the argument that Triple G won that first fight, that it wasn't a draw, that he owned that fight, and the second fight, it was closer. I'll give it to Canelo, but it was closer. This third fight will be like that. Then, like, we got it or we don't have it. You know what I mean?
I think it's odd enough. I've always been of the opinion that both fights were draws. Like, for me, I think they were both kind of split right down the middle. I look at this fight a lot like, or this rivalry a lot like Pacquiao and Marquez, where by the time they got to their third or fourth fight, whatever it was, Pacquiao had moved up and beat Cotto and, beaten all these bigger guys. But there's something about Marquez's style that bothers him. And there's a part of me that thinks that Golovkin, there's just something about his style that bothers Canelo.
I mean, honestly, Golovkin's an amazing fighter, right? And somebody else scream, a bunch of people will scream past his time, but the guy fought everybody who would fight him at the time.
Yeah.
When he was the dominant player. Anybody who would step in that ring, he fought. And he didn't duck anybody. There just wasn't anybody for him to fight. He cleaned up that division, and there was nobody there. He beat Danny, so like now you look at it and everyone screams his name, but very similar. Had he not lost that Canelo fight, the first fight, I think he deserved the win. Had he got that W, this is we're in a whole different world, right? Canelo isn't the dominant star at that point. Golovkin is right now. Right. And so now they are, everyone argues back and forth. Well, no, like the guy is amazing. Let's not deny the guy had a phenomenal amateur career, a phenomenal professional career, dominated everybody, fought all over the world, never really had a home base. He went and fought everywhere. Monaco, everywhere. He fought no matter what people said, and he did it. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. It is that, Chavez, Oscar De La Hoya thing, right? Where it's like, he's just better. He's just better in that moment. It doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like so.
Yeah, I remember I've been to a couple Golovkin fights, but I was at his fight with Rosado, and people really didn't know him like that. And we were in New
Yeah,
York, so everybody was Rosado. They all
of
had
course.
t-shirts on.
Puerto Rico, yeah.
Yep. And I got there, and they started fighting. I was like, "Yo, this guy is some different shit. This guy is very special." And I think he's at a lot of points he's been almost like a victim of his own talent. Where
Yeah,
he's so good that he gets the draw with Canelo, and nobody wants to deal with that because you're not going to make Canelo money fighting him.
right. Well, that's just it, right? Like it was a great fight, but it wasn't like, oh, knockdown, or no one was dominating anybody. So it was like, hey, great. It was a great
Yeah,
day. Fans like us appreciate fights like that. The
yeah,
average fan wants to see a domination. And
right.
so, I think that is his case. Even look at the fight with Danny Jacobs. You know what I mean? Like he just the guy has been doing it for a long time, and he is
I was
definitely
at
one of
that
the
fight
top.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great fight. You were like, oh wow, look at this. Just the subtle movements that TV doesn't even really show you, because live you were like, oh, look at that. He didn't get hit. He didn't get touched at all. TV, it looks like he's getting touched because he's moving and sweat's flying. It's like you're live sitting there. You're like, that guy didn't get touched at
Yeah.
all. So.
And the atmosphere, I was at the Danny Jacobs fight too, bro. And the atmosphere that night was unreal.
And look at like you just said, the man came into New York to fight these fights. He was the champ. He was the name.
And
And he
Jacobs is
came
a New York
into those
kid.
people. He comes into those people's yards and goes with them.
Yeah. It's really special. I think it's a better fight than people are talking about.
Yeah.
So Coyle versus Lopez Rodriguez, Falcao versus Farias. I'm gonna make sure I leave a little link down below. But tell people where they can watch the fight.
Phenomenal. So if you are away and not in Massachusetts, you can go to throwdownsports.com, and they'll have a link to the Down and Dirty series. And right there, you can purchase it. It's going to be great, amazing. We've got some talented commentators. You stepping in and doing some commentary for us. So yeah, it's a good time. If you're in Massachusetts, you can jump on Eventbrite or buy tickets at the door at the Melrose Memorial Hall. Great venue, old school, seats wrap around, rings dead center. It's one of those like fun times.
It's funny enough, this is the first episode I've done since we put this together for me to do commentary. So this is the first time anyone who watches my show is hearing this. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to be doing commentary on this event. So I hope you tune in, not just to see me, but for fucking a phenomenal night of boxing.
It's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to have you. And obviously for us, the Down and Dirty series is just continuing to build. I have a dream that one day it is going to be very similar to the USA Boxing series of Tuesday night fights. So as this builds, we are going to be able to bring that top tier talent like we are right now against other top tier talents, and do it with more frequency that people can be like, I'm chiming in to watch boxing on, Friday.
Right.
And so we're excited about that.
And it's so valuable, bro. It really is. Like growing up in New York, they had Broadway boxing on, I think it was on MSG. And I saw all the New York guys when they were young, man. I saw Curtis Stevens. I saw Peter Quillen, Paulie Malignaggi. All these guys' first TV fights were on, these kinds of cards, man. They're really crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I used to watch the Broadway boxing just to be able to connect. Like, oh, who's out there? What do we have going on?
Yeah.
And it is crucial. It's crucial for the development. It's crucial for people to realize that it's not just about buying the $75 fight on pay-per-view, but getting this 1995 fight to help push these kids to that next level, because as you support them, they are the future. I on this card, I'm not your stereotypical promoter. When we talk about these fights, I'm not going to jump on and be like, I've got 10 world champions on here. I'm not going to do that. I've got some really good kids who can fight, and they'll fight well. Are they going to be world champs? 90% of my card will not be world champs. 10% of that card, though, they are going to be the next dominant factor. And I think that we see that with with Yamaguchi and with Connor Coyle on this particular card. And then on the next card coming up behind it, you'll see the same thing. I think you'll see some real dominant guys, but that'll be for another day.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, Mike. I'm looking forward to being down in Boston and meeting you and getting to be a part of this.
Well, I'll see you in less than 5 days. So I'm excited. Thank you for having me on. Very excited to be a part of this. And please let me know if I make the cut. If people enjoy it, I'll come back.
All right, Mike. We'll talk soon, my friend. Thanks for your time.
Bye, brother.
Later.
Thank you.
Peace.